Men taking accountability? Yeah, that's a whole bunch of hokum. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Pam. In my channel, I talk about movies, books, music, and really whatever I want to talk about. Today, I have a essay for you about Damian McCarthy's latest horror movie, Hokum. It premiered at South by Southwest earlier this year, and Neon picked it up for distribution. It came out in theaters on May 1st. Let's start off with a little synopsis. Hokum is the third feature film written and directed by Irish filmmaker Damian McCarthy. His two other horror movies are 2020's Caveat and 2024's Oddity. Hokum follows Ohm Baum, played by Adam Scott. He's a cynical American author who travels to a remote hotel in Ireland, where his parents had honeymooned many years earlier. He travels here with the intention of spreading their ashes, finish the ending to his famous trilogy, and overall wrap up some loose ends. At the hotel and in the surrounding grounds, Ohm encounters a cast of interesting characters. Fergal, played by Michael Patrick, the no-nonsense groundskeeper. Cobb, played by Brendan Conroy, the superstitious and creepy hotel owner. Mal, played by Peter Coonan, his nervous but amiable son-in-law who works the front desk. Albie, played by Will O'Connell, the eager and sincere bellhop. Fiona, played by Florence Ordesh, the quiet and perceptive bartender. And finally, Jerry, played by David Wilmot, a mysterious man living out of his van in the nearby woods. Ohm is openly rude and dismissive toward most of them, except maybe Fiona and Jerry, who are among the few he allows himself to connect with. Some mysteries start to unfold. Ohm learns of the honeymoon suite, which has been sealed off for years to keep a witch trapped inside, or at least that's what the hotel owner claims. Later, a hotel staff member suddenly goes missing. This is when the film begins to shift into something much darker, part haunted house, part psychological thriller, and part mystery. Before I keep going, this is your spoiler warning. Please go watch Hokum first. It really is such a fun time. It's very scary. At least I thought it was very scary. I screamed multiple times. But yeah, go watch it first. I'll be here when you get back. On the surface, Hokum is a haunted hotel story. But underneath, there's a story about men who are haunted not by ghosts or witches, but by shame of the violence they have committed, especially against women, and the lies they tell themselves to avoid taking responsibility. Part 1. What or who is actually being haunted? Despite its supernatural framing, the true source of horror in Hokum isn't the witch or the hotel. It's three of the men, Ohm, Jerry, and Mal. Each of them is carrying shame and denial. Ohm is haunted by the ghost of his mother. Whether her ghost is real or not is almost beside the point. What matters is what she represents, which is a past he hasn't fully confronted. The hotel, and specifically the honeymoon suite, is supposed to symbolize the beginning of a life together that is filled with love, trust, and intimacy. But in Hokum, it becomes a space defined by the opposite: secrecy, violence, and decay. It's where Fiona is hidden, where truth is buried, and ultimately where it literally resurfaces. For Ohm, being locked inside that room forces him to confront not just the supernatural, but the truth of what he's been avoiding his whole life. At the core of Hokum are the three men and three acts of violence against women. Ohm, who killed his mother accidentally as a child. Jerry, who killed his wife under the guise of quote-unquote mercy because she was ill. And Mal, who murdered Fiona out of fear and self-preservation. The film draws a clear moral distinction between them, not just based on what they've done, but on how they live with it. By the end of the film, only Ohm demonstrates genuine remorse. While Jerry is outwardly compassionate and even likable, he ultimately rationalizes his actions. He frames his wife's death as an act of kindness, and he not only avoids facing the legal repercussions of his actions by running away, staying in hiding, and evading the police, but he is also avoiding a deeper confrontation with the reality of what he's done. There are hints that he could have reached that point. He does show concern for Fiona and actively helps Ohm search for her, but he dies before he has the chance to really take accountability for what he did to his wife. Mal, on the other hand, refuses to take accountability entirely. He deflects, manipulates, and attempts to bury the truth quite literally by putting Fiona in the dumbwaiter and locking her away in the honeymoon suite. And he does all of this to keep up appearances. Ultimately, the film punishes each of the men accordingly. Jerry is killed before he has the opportunity for redemption, and Mal, the worst of the three, is dragged quite literally into hell. Only Ohm survives. Not because he's completely blameless, but because he's capable of change. Yes, he can be abrasive and even cruel. We see this most clearly in the way he treats Albie, who is an overly eager fan, guilty only of asking too many questions and oversharing his dreams of also being a writer. Instead of dismissing him in literally any other way, Ohm is not only condescending, but he decides that the best way to get rid of Albie is by burning his hand with a hot spoon. By the end of the film, we don't see Ohm fully apologize for this, but we do see small, meaningful changes. For example, Ohm chooses to stop drinking. He agrees, even if half-heartedly, to read Albie's manuscript. And maybe most tellingly, he takes Fiona's earlier critique of his writing seriously. She had pointed out that his writing was too bleak. And originally, he had intended to end his novel with a very, very dark ending, but he instead decides to rewrite it with a sense of hope. The original ending was supposed to end with the conquistador and his young guide, the young boy. They are standing in the middle of a desert, and they're attempting to open a bottle with some sort of secret message, but they're not able to find a hard surface to open it with. In the original ending that Ohm had planned, the conquistador was supposed to attempt and ultimately fail to open the bottle. He kills the boy and ends up dying after his unsuccessful attempt. So it was all for nothing. In the new ending, the conquistador tries to sacrifice himself instead. He tells the boy to crack the bottle on his head. But the boy chooses to hug the conquistador. And then the sands disperse in the desert, and we see the skull of a ram's head, hinting that there is some hope and they're going to be able to crack this bottle open. This new ending can be interpreted as Ohm not only forgiving himself, but maybe even also forgiving his alcoholic father, who was very neglectful and maybe abusive after his mom died. It also tells us that the answers to his problems are not at the bottom of the bottle, but in finding connection with others. These changes that Ohm undergoes don't erase what he's done or suddenly make him no longer a jerk, but these actions show something the other men never truly reached: a willingness to confront himself and to take steps to become someone different. Part 2. Women as mirrors, not characters. Although I really did love this movie, I love the way that it explores these flawed male characters, I do have kind of one big qualm with its writing, specifically in the way that it portrays female characters, or more like the lack of female characters. There's really only like 3 female presences in this movie: the ghost of Ohm's mother, the witch, and Fiona. And out of the 3, Fiona is the only one who's actually kind of a character, and not completely flat. She does have a bit of a backstory. She had an affair with Mal, and after becoming pregnant with his child, she makes a choice to keep the baby. She expresses fear, vulnerability, and desire. But even then, she ultimately exists only in relation to the men around her. The two other female quote-unquote characters, the mother and the witch, are less characters and more just manifestations. They're symbols of guilt and punishment. Which raises an uncomfortable question. Is Hokum critiquing the way women are reduced to narrative devices, or does it participate in that dynamic? Because while the film is deeply concerned with violence against women, it rarely gives those women full subjectivity. Their primary function is to reveal something about the men, and after walking out of the movie, it was something that was, for me, kind of tough to ignore. Part 3. The Myth of the Nice Guy. One of the film's most effective moves is how it plays with perception. When we first meet Fergal, the groundskeeper, he seems dangerous. He's introduced in the aftermath of killing a goat, which he dismisses casually as just dealing with a pest. Cobb, the hotel owner, also raises suspicion. Our first impression of him is as he unsettles a group of children with macabre, almost gleeful stories. He's both eccentric and vaguely menacing. And then there's Jerry, whose very presence is suspicious. Living out of a van in the woods, he fits the profile of someone we've been conditioned not to trust. Meanwhile, Mal appears to be the opposite, friendly, approachable, and safe. But as the story unfolds, that dynamic flips. It's not Fergal, despite his rough exterior, nor the creepy Cobb or the strange Jerry, who are the true threat. Mal, the quote-unquote nice guy, is. A little side note here. So in hindsight, the real villain was kind of a dead giveaway from the start based on the names. So I mean, Mal, which is Latin for bad, it was like right there. And then there's Fergal, which apparently his name means man of valor. So that was also, if you know what that name means, hinting that that guy wasn't the bad guy. But anyway, what truly makes Mal a villain isn't just what he did, it's how desperately he tries to keep it hidden. He urges others not to look deeper, not to question, not to uncover the truth. He's even willing to turn a blind eye and let Jerry get away, even when he knows that he has also committed murder. Mal represents one of the film's central ideas, that the most dangerous people aren't always the most obvious ones, and that the stories people tell about themselves are often just that, stories. Hokum. Part 4. Ohm and the Possibility of Redemption. Ohm, ironically, is the most outwardly unpleasant character in the film right from the beginning. He's rude, dismissive, and at times he's openly hostile, especially in the way that he treats Albie. But he's also the only one who consistently shows moments of empathy. First, he cares about animals. When he first sees Fergal right after he had killed that goat, he immediately challenges him. He questions why he had to kill the goat. He asks, why couldn't you have sprayed him with water or something? He also protects children. In the lobby, when he first walks in and sees Cobb telling them those disturbing stories, he tells him to leave them alone. And even after learning that Cobb is the owner of the hotel, he doesn't care. He stands by his word and does not apologize for the way that he talked to him. And over time, he softens towards Fiona. Even though he's initially rude towards her, he becomes nicer and he opens up to her and ultimately becomes one of the only people who refuses to stop looking for her after she disappears. What separates Ohm from the others isn't that he's better, It's that he's willing to face the truth. Although at first, he tries to take his life after no longer being able to bear the weight of his shame, he gets a second chance at life and he doesn't run from his guilt forever. He stops burying it. And because of that, he's able to forgive himself and turn a new leaf. Part 5. Conclusion and the meaning of Hokum. By the end of the film, the title starts to feel less ironic and more revealing. Hokum refers to something false, something exaggerated, or a convenient fiction. And that's exactly what these men rely on. Jerry tells himself his actions were merciful. Mal tells himself he had no other choice. Ohm tells himself he's irredeemable. But all of those narratives are distortions. The real horror of Hokum isn't just what these men have done, it's the stories they construct to live with it. And while the film ultimately tells us that confronting those stories is the only path forward, it also leaves us with a bit of unresolved tension, because even though it explores violence against women, it still centers men so completely that the women themselves feel like an afterthought, which makes you wonder whether that too is part of the Hokum. I'm curious now to revisit Oddity, which I had seen already, and to watch the director's other film, Caveat. I wonder if his tendency to explore male guilt at the expense of his female characters is a one-time issue in the writing of this movie, or if it's a pattern in his storytelling. But these are just my thoughts, and I would love to hear what you thought of Hokum. Were you also super scared? I really enjoyed it. I had such a fun time watching it in theaters. I hope that my sister and my roommate who went to see it with me weren't too embarrassed just because I kept screaming. But the lady that was sitting next to me also seemed to be having a great time. She kept like covering her mouth and also on the verge of screaming the whole time. So I didn't feel so bad about myself. But yeah, I would probably go watch it again, maybe in theaters or maybe just at home. And who knows, maybe it's just as scary the second time around. So I have some questions for you guys, and I hope that you will sound off in the comments. I would really love to hear everybody else's analysis on this movie. So do you think that Ohm was truly redeemed by the end of the film? Do you think that the twist at the end of learning that the flask that he had been drinking out of was spiked, does that affect anything? Do you think that the supernatural entities were real? And is Fiona given enough agency in this movie? Or do you agree with me that maybe she's just kind of there to further the arcs of the other male characters? Thank you so much again for watching. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.